the ancient whispers of the temple. Close your eyes now, dear listener, and let the soft hush of night wrap around you like a warm cloak. Breathe in slowly and out. We are about to drift together through the mists of time, back to the very first sparks of secret brotherhoods and hidden knowledge. This is the beginning of our long, gentle tale, the story of the Templars and the Freemasons, and the invisible threads that have bound them across centuries. Let the words flow like a quiet river, carrying you deeper into sleep with every sentence. And it begins where all true legends begin, in the golden light of an ancient temple, far across the sea of years, the city of Jerusalem, shimmering under a desert sun, more than 3,000 years ago. King Solomon, wise beyond all men, had been chosen to raise a temple that would hold the very presence of the divine. No ordinary building, this. No. It was to be the masterpiece of stone and spirit, its walls whispering secrets of geometry, harmony, and the hidden order of the universe. Craftsmen sailed from distant Tyre. Masons arrived from every corner of the known world. And among them walked a single master builder whose name would echo through the ages. Hiram, the son of a widow, a man of quiet genius and unyielding honor. In the cool shadows beneath the rising walls, Hiram taught his chosen few not only the sacred signs, the grip of the hand that sealed a promise, the square and compass that measured truth itself, the pillars named Boaz and Jenkin that stood silent like guardians, but deeper mysteries still. Whispers spoke of knowledge older than the flood itself, alchemical fires that could transmute the soul, hermetic truths drawn from a lost world of advanced wisdom, fragments of a pre-Diluvian civilization whose echoes would one day be called Atlantis. Only the initiated learned the Master's word, a single syllable of power said to unlock the very stones and the hidden chambers of the heart. They worked in silence, bound by oaths older than memory. For this was no guild of ordinary builders. This was the first brotherhood of the craft, a circle of stonemasons who guarded knowledge meant only for those pure of heart. But even in paradise, shadows fall. One fateful day, 3 jealous apprentices cornered Hiram at the temple's unfinished gate. They demanded the secret word. He refused. A blow, then another, and the master builder fell, his blood staining the white stones. His body was hidden beneath a makeshift grave, marked only by an acacia sprig. The faithful searched the hills and valleys until they found him, lifting him with a special grip that would one day be remembered as the lion's paw. They buried him with honor, and the secret lived on. Not in books, but in the hearts of the remaining brothers, passed mouth to ear, hand to hand, down through generations of wandering masons who built cathedrals and castles across Europe. These were no operative masons, the quiet keepers of the ancient craft. Their marks carved secretly into every cornerstone. The centuries rolled on like gentle waves. Empires rose and crumbled. The Temple of Solomon was destroyed, rebuilt, and destroyed again. Yet another brotherhood endured, hidden in plain sight among the guilds of stonecutters. Their lodges were simple, timber rooms lit by a single candle, where apprentices learned the tools of the trade and the deeper tools of the soul. They spoke of a lost word, a perfect temple yet to be built, and they waited. Then, in the year of our Lord, 1099, the Crusaders thundered into Jerusalem. The holy city was taken, and the roads to the sacred places became dangerous for pilgrims. 9 humble knights, poor in coin, but rich in faith, approached the King of Jerusalem. Their leader, Hugues de Payens, a tall, quiet Frenchman with eyes like still water, made a simple request. Grant us the rights to guard the pilgrim's path. The king gave them quarters in the very ruins of Solomon's temple itself. And so, the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon were born, the Knights Templar. They lived simply at first, 9 men sharing a single horse, their white mantles plain, but beneath the temple mount they dug, not merely for treasure, but for the very same ancient wisdom Hiram's masons had once protected. Legends preserved by those who still walk the path today tell how the knights sought fragments of a world before the great flood. Hermetic scrolls, alchemical keys, echoes of a lost civilization whose technology and philosophy had survived in hidden chambers. They found more than dust and stone, ancient knowledge that spoke of sacred geometry, initiation rites older than memory, and the same grips and signs the Masons had guarded for centuries. Soon the Pope himself blessed their order. They wore the red cross of martyrdom upon their breast. Wealth flowed in from kings and merchants who trusted them to safeguard gold across continents. They became bankers to the world. Their commanderies rising like silent fortress from London to Paris to the Holy Land. Yet they never forgot their first home beneath the temple. Their oaths echoed the old Mason's vows: secrecy, brotherhood, protection of the weak. For nearly 200 years, the Templars stood as guardians of the faith and keepers of mysteries. Their white, cloaked knights out into battle, singing hymns, their banners snapping in the wind. But power, even holy power, draws envy. Kings coveted their riches, popes feared their independence, and so, on a cold October dawn, in 1307, Friday the 13th, a day still whispered about in shadowed corners, King Philip of France ordered every Templar in his realm arrested. Accusations flew like dark birds. Heresy, secret idols, forbidden rites. Under torture, many confessed to things they had never done. Grand Master Jacques de Molay, old and broken, was led to the stake in Paris in 1314. As the flames rose, he cursed the king and the pope, declaring their deaths would follow within a year. And history records that both men did indeed die soon after. Yet the story does not end in smoke and ash. For not all Templars were taken. Some slipped away by ship. Some vanished into the mists of Scotland, where King Robert the Bruce welcomed their swords at the Battle of Beckenburn. Others found refuge among the stonemasons' guilds. Those same quiet craftsmen whose ancestors had once gardened Huron's secrets in the cool stone yards of Europe. The warrior monks and the builders met. The knights brought tales of the Temple Mount, of sacred geometry discovered beneath the stones, of oaths sworn in blood and faith, and of an unbroken line of initiation that stretched back through floods and forgotten ages. The Masons offered their lodges, their tools, their ancient signs. A quiet marriage began. Warrior and craftsman, sword and chisel, blending into something new. And even now, in our own quiet age, the flame has never truly gone out. A Grand Master of a living order of the Temple himself, raised in the old ways since boyhood, a high degree brother of the Masonic craft, carrying a family line that traces through revolutionaries and poets, speaks softly of how the Knights and the Masons were always one in spirit. He tells of the secret grips shared across distant cultures, of initiations that echo Hiram's own, of knowledge preserved not in dusty tomes, but in the hearts of men who still walk the path today. The brotherhood endures, mouth to ear, hand to hand, guarding the same ancient light that once burned beneath Solomon's temple. Whispers spread of other shadows too. In Germany, brothers of the Rose and Cross spoke of alchemical light hidden in the same temple wisdom. In distant lands, orders of mystics claimed older roots still. But the true thread, the one that would one day weave the Templars and the Freemasons into a single tapestry, lay quietly waiting in the stone yards and the hidden lodges. The day turned. The English fell back, and Scotland breathed free. In gratitude, Bruce is said to have granted the Knights sanctuary in the wild northern lands, where they could lay down their swords and take up the chisel once more. Among those who sheltered them were the stone masons of the guilds, operative craftsmen whose fathers and grandfathers had carved the great cathedrals of Europe. In the stone yards of Edinburgh and Glasgow, the warriors and the builders met in timber lodges lit by a single tallow candle. The knights brought tales of the Temple Mount, of chambers deep beneath the earth, where Hiram's secrets had slumbered for millennia, of sacred geometry that aligned stars and souls, of grips and words that bound men across lifetimes. The Masons, in turn, shared their ancient marks: the square for justice, the compass for the circle of eternity, the level for equality before the divine. Together they spoke of lost word, a perfect temple yet to be raised, and of knowledge older than the flood itself. As one Grand Master of a living Templar order would one day reveal in our own quiet age. A man raised in the tradition since boyhood, a high-degree brother of the craft, with bloodlines stretching through poets and revolutionaries. These were not separate paths. They were the same eternal river, flowing from the same hidden spring. Years turned into decades. The Templars, now cloaked in the plain aprons of the Mason, faded from open view, but never from memory. Some journeyed farther still. Whispers carried on the sea winds tell of ships slipping westward across the gray Atlantic, guided by the stars and ancient maps preserved from the temple. In the late 14th century, around the year 1362, a small company of Goths and Northmen, 8 and 22 in number, numbers rich with meaning in the old rites, reached the shores of what we now call North America. A stone they left behind, carved deep into a Minnesota hillside, spoke in runes of their journey. A land claim, a sacred mark, the hooked X that would one day echo in Masonic symbols and Templar ciphers alike. Modern guardians of these traditions, men like the forensic scholar and knight who has walked both paths, speak of this as no mere legend, but as living proof. The Templars had carried their treasures, their scrolls, and their bloodlines to a new world, hiding them in caverns and islands where only the initiated would one day find them. The Kensington stone, weathered by centuries, yet speaking clearly to those with eyes to see, stands as a silent sentinel, its sacred geometry aligning with the very pillars of Boaz and Jachin. Back across the ocean, in the green valleys of Scotland, the Sinclair family, bloodkin to the Templars through ancient lines, raised a chapel that still baffles the world. Roslin Chapel, begun in 1446, rose stone by stone like a book carved in granite. Its walls bloom with carvings, the green man of ancient wisdom, the pillars echoing Solomon's temple, stars and flowers and hidden vaults said to hold the very ark itself. Masons worked there in secret, blending the knightly crosses with the builder's marks. Those who keep the flame today tell us the chapel was no mere church, but a living codex, a stone library of hermetic truths, alchemical fires, and Gnostic light, all preserved from the days when the first knights dug beneath Jerusalem. The same sacred knowledge Hiram had guarded, the same geometries that once measured the universe, now whispered from every arc and boss. The centuries softened into the Renaissance, a time when the old light began to glow brighter in the hearts of men. By the 1600s, the operative masons, those who still hewed stone for palaces and bridges, were joined by a new kind of brother. Gentlemen, scholars, alchemists, and seekers of wisdom entered the lodges, not to build with mortar and chisel, but to build the temple within. These were the speculative masons, men who saw in the tools of the craft the symbols of the soul, the gavel to strike away vice, the trowel to spread brotherly love, the apron to remind them of purity. One such early seeker was Elias Ashmole, a quiet scholar in England who was made a mason in 1646. In his diary, the candle of history flickers with his words. He had been admitted into the fellowship of the Freemasons, bearers of secrets older than the pyramids. The guilds, once bound by royal charters and the daily toil of stone, began to open their doors wider. Lodges met in taverns and private chambers, their floors drawn with chalk and charcoal into beautiful mosaics of black and white squares, the checkered pavement of life's dualities. And the center burned the altar with the Holy Bible, the square, and the compass. Apprentices learned not only to square their work, but to square their lives. Fellow crafts studied the liberal arts and the hidden sciences. Masters received the ancient charges, the old charges that traced the craft back through the flood, through Nimrod and Yuthlid, through Solomon and Hiram, and now through the Templars who had kept the flame alive. Then came the dawn of a new century, the year 1717, a year that still glows softly in the memory of every lodge. On the feast day of St. John the Baptist, 4 old lodges in London gathered at the Goose and Gridiron Tavern. There, in the upper room, warmed by pipes and good fellowship, they formed the first Grand Lodge of England. No longer scattered guilds, the Freemasons now stood as one great body under a Grand Master. Anthony Sayer, a quiet bookseller, was chosen to lead them. Soon after, in 1723, a Scottish clergyman named James Anderson gathered the old charges and legends into a single book, the Constitutions of the Freemasons. In its pages, the story of Hiram Abiff was set down in full. The Temple of Solomon rose again in words, and the Templar echoes lingered like incense in the air. The craft was no longer only for stonecutters. Noblemen, poets, scientists, Sir Christopher Wren himself, architect of St. Paul's, is whispered to have been among them, now wore the apron with pride. Across the English Channel, in France and Germany, the light spread like dawn across the hills. New rites bloomed. The Scottish rite, with its 33 degrees of deepening mystery. The York rite, where the Order of the Temple was reborn in solemn ceremony. In the higher degrees, the candidate knelt once more as a knight, taking vows that echoed the poor fellow soldiers of Christ. The sword and the trowel became one. Those who today hold the highest chairs in living orders, Grand Masters initiated in childhood, carrying family lines of poets and revolutionaries, speak softly of how the Templar and the Masons were never truly apart. The same grips, the same signs, the same quest for the lost word. The initiations, they say, stretch back through floods and forgotten ages, through Atlantis itself, where a civilization of light once flourished before the waters rose. Fragments of that wisdom, hermetic keys, alchemical fires, sacred geometries, were carried by the knights beneath the Temple Mount and passed, mouth to ear, into the lodges. Oh, how the brotherhood grew! Lodges sprang up in every city: Paris, Berlin, Vienna, Edinburgh. Kings and princes sought admission, yet inside the tiled room all were equal. The candle burned late into the night as brothers debated philosophy, studied the stars, and practiced the ancient rites. Benjamin Franklin, that wise American printer and inventor, was made a Mason in Philadelphia in 1731. He rose quickly, becoming Grand Master of Pennsylvania. In his quiet study, surrounded by books and experiments, he pondered electricity and virtue alike, seeing in both the divine spark the temple once housed. Across the ocean, George Washington would one day lay the cornerstone of the Capitol with the square and the level, his Masonic apron still preserved as a relic of that sacred act. But the story deepened still. Even as the lodges shone in the open light, the old Templar treasures stirred in secret. Modern keepers of the tradition, like the knight and scholar who had spent decades tracing runes and stones, tell of how Henry Sinclair, descendant of those Bannockburn knights, sailed in 1398 with 8 ships and a company of monks and warriors. They reached the New World, leaving markers and hiding vaults of gold, scrolls, and sacred relics. One such vault, legend says, lies beneath an island in the Hudson, its inventory listing chests of coins, golden crucifixes, even replicas of the Ark itself. Benjamin Franklin himself is whispered to have drawn upon that hidden wealth during the dark days of the Revolution, funding the fight for liberty with treasures guarded by brothers across the sea. 53 of the 56 signers of the Declaration, it is said, walked the same Masonic path. The hooked X, the sacred numbers 8 and 22, the checkered floor, all wove the old Templar thread into the very fabric of a new nation. In the quiet gatherings of our own time, those who have been raised in the orders since childhood speak with calm certainty. A Grand Master of the Temple, also a 32nd or 33rd degree brother of the craft, describes how the flame was never extinguished. Initiated at the tender age of 8 into the living tradition, he carries a family legacy that flows through revolutionaries and poets, through alchemists and Gnostics. He and others like him, scholars of Hermetic wisdom, explorers of Egyptian chambers closed to ordinary eyes, teach that the Templars sought not mere gold, but the Ark of many covenants, fragments of Atlantean light, the very blueprint of creation itself. They trade not in coin, but in the currency of the soul. The Masons offered the perfect vessel, lodges where the outer work of stone mirrored the inner work of the spirit. Together they formed the collegia of the temple, schools of philosophy and symbolism, where the old oaths are renewed, the old grips remembered, the old light passed hand to hand. And so, the invisible temple rose higher still. Lodges crossed the Atlantic with the colonists. In Boston and New York, in Charleston and Savannah, brothers met in candlelit rooms, while the outside world turned towards revolution and rebirth. The same symbols that once adorned Roslyn now graced the great seal of the young republic, the unfinished pyramid, the all-seeing eye, the eagle that once soared above Templar banners. Washington, Franklin, and their brethren understood that the perfect temple was not made of marble alone, but of free men bound by honor, equality, and the quest for light. Yet even in this golden age of openness, shadows lingered. Some lodges guarded higher mysteries, the royal ark revealing the lost word at last. The Knights Templar degree reenacting the old trials with solemn swords and white mantles once more. In Germany, the strict observance claimed direct descent from the original knights, their grand masters tracing lines back to Jacques de Molay himself. In France, the rite of Memphis and Mizraim wove Egyptian and Hermetic threads into the Masonic loom, and always, like quiet guardians in the background, the Brothers of the Rose and Cross Rosicrucians shared the alchemical fire that the Templars had first kindled beneath the Temple Mount. The centuries flowed on, gentle and unstoppable as a river finding the sea. By the late 1700s, the craft had spread to every corner of the known world, in India and the Caribbean, in Australia and the farthest colonies. Lodges opened their doors. The operative mason's tools had become the speculative mason's mirror of the soul. The Templar's sword had become the mason's trowel of brotherly love, and through it all, the ancient whisper endured. The temple is not in Jerusalem alone. It is here, in every heart that seeks, in every lodge where brothers meet upon the level and part upon the square. Those who walk the path in our own age confirm it with quiet voices. The same Grand Master who was welcomed into the order as a boy, who has lectured across continents and led expeditions into hidden chambers of Egypt, speaks of an unbroken chain. The grips are the same. The signs are the same. The quest for the lost word, for the perfect temple, for the light that survived flood and fire and betrayal. It beats on, steady as a heartbeat. He and his brother founded collegia to teach the philosophy and symbolism, to ensure that the flame passes to the next generation, mouth to ear, hand to hand, just as Hiram taught beneath Solomon's walls, just as the first 9 knights swore in the ruins of the temple. The lodges have risen in light. The invisible temple stands strong across oceans and ages. The marriage of knight and craftsman is complete, and the Brotherhood watches over a world that has forgotten much, yet still feels the pull of the old light in quiet moments before sleep. Rest now. Let your breathing slow. The candle in the lodge burns low and steady, its flame dancing to the ancient wisdom itself. The night is deep and kind, wrapping you in its velvet cloak. We will return where the light crosses the great sea in earnest, where revolutions are kindled in large rooms, and where the treasures of the old world find new homes in the soil of the new. Until then, drift gently into sleep, knowing the brothers of old and new stand sentinel, keeping their quiet watch over anyone who seeks the light.